So today's obviously a bit of a different one. Most people know you as the founder and client director of Power 365, but before all of that, there was the RAF or the Army, as I like to call it. But obviously, going from the RAF into Microsoft and founding a consultancy isn't really a straight line. Where were you in the RAF when you left? How did you get there, and how are you kind of got to where you are now?
Odd journey in itself. Contextually, I actually aimed to join the RAF as a linguist. When I originally applied, because I found and sought refuge in languages from a young age, I went to apply for the RAF as an intelligence analyst voice, which would have taken me on a training path for Pashto or Farsi. Based on the time that I applied to join, we were pulling out of Afghanistan, which meant the need for Pashto and Farsi minimized. And I suppose as a kid, I'd always been good at tech, and my only actual exam results from an AS/A level perspective were in tech. So the careers office pushed me towards an ICT technician. So I technically didn't join up as my first choice, but ended up in IT. And IT in the RAF is quite vague slash vast at the same time. Back when I joined up in 2011, it could have meant anything. It could have meant like field comms. It could have meant ground radio, which is things to do with like airfields, etc. It could have meant cyber. It could have meant what I ended up in, which was more of a support role. And through training, we were always told to try and avoid the support roles. And the instructors were all typically much more engineer focused, which is what most people joined up to do when they join for an IT tech role. I was never very focused on engineering, so I ended up going and pushing myself in towards the more software side, which meant my first posting in the RAF was actually to Bryce Norton as what we call an iHub, and I was a SharePoint admin. That's a long way to answer your initial question, but my first role was in SharePoint, not specifically as a SharePoint admin, but that was the predominant technology used at RAF Bryce Norton. And actually, my first role really kind of found me resetting passwords and providing day-to-day IT support really for the 9,000 people or whatever it is that are based at RAF Bryce Norton. Maybe to follow that on contextually as to how that transitioned me here, I found my ceiling very quickly resetting passwords. It wasn't the most enticing and or fun role, and I found my ceiling quite quickly. And just thankfully, based on the management slash leadership that we had at RAF Bryce Norton, we were given a little bit of free reign to explore. And there was a technology back then called InfoPath, which was essentially a form builder that you could do some pretty cool stuff with. And we, as a kind of section known as C4I, were given a bit of free reign to walk around camp and speak to other sections. Might be the regiment training flight or the physical training, the gym, etc., and just kind of chat to them about what they were doing day to day. How were you booking people onto a course, or how are you recording results, or all of these things? And that really saw my passion towards like business process automation. Put me in front of some officers, put me in front of some management, put me in front of some good people, and I got to build some cool stuff. Loved it. Loved my time doing that. And I suppose if I was to translate that into what I do today, a lot of the entire role that we do at Power 365, right, is consultancy. So being able to speak to somebody, identify a problem and identify a solution and implement a solution is exactly what we were doing when we were at Bryce. I did, however, transition so after a few deployments, um, and again finding my ceiling. My journey differed slightly from the other gents that we've got in the business in the sense that I moved away from IT and decided whilst I was in Cyprus that I'd apply for my officer. So, and that entailed more leadership stuff. So I did all of the recruitment process for that, did all my tests, did all of the interviews, some crazy stuff that you got to do. You got to like debate certain things and speak about world topics and psychometric tests and all these kinds of things. Was successful. and got to go and do an 18-month engineering degree at Cosford. So I went and I actually learned how to be an engineer, oh, engineering management, I should say. So how to manage engineers, and then went to Cranwell and uh, left Cranwell when I realized that corporate London pays a lot more. And again, I chased my higher ceiling, I guess. And it was always destined to see the big bright lights of London. And that brings me through to starting the business, and here we are today.
And building it up. So I don't know whether people might not know, when you first started, your kind of primary recruitment strategy was ex-military, wasn't it? Um, so from that, I think when people hear military, they kind of picture like structure, discipline, hierarchy. But what did it give you, not in terms of roles, but in mindset? And why was that then your predominant recruitment strategy going into founding a business?
Literally, I mean, I joined at 18, so for me as a joke about it, but when I joined, I was about 58 kilograms wet with long Justin Bieber hair and could barely spell my own name, let alone act professionally. The military was a reckoning for me, and it gave me the necessary structure and ability to explore who I was as a man or as an adult. The soft skills that the military really focus on, they're hounded into you. So, like from phase one training within the first few weeks, you're given leaderless exercises where you're pretty much given a scenario. You speak to anyone in the military and we'll joke about it, but the scenario will be here's a massive wooden log and some barrels and some rope. You've got to get all of these barrels over there. Go. And they deliberately don't appoint anybody to take charge just to
Right.
see who takes charge because somebody needs to in essence, right, to coordinate things. And I always found in the military, if you think caveman wise, typically people will follow age or they'll follow strength if you think back to
Yeah.
biology and psychology. But I always found early on in the military that, and I suppose even when I was going through my schooling days, that people kind of lean in towards me for guidance and or leadership. Why I'm raising that is the military offered all of these types of insights into your character. So being able to discover that you've got the ability to take charge of a situation and stand up and maybe be slightly more confident than others, or being able to push that confidence in a different way, or they're huge on deliberately throwing you into I mean, the scenario is if nobody knows what's going on around you, then why not you do it? If nobody else actually knows what's going on, then you go for it. It was all of these soft skills, always say yes to things, big agenda that was always pushed. And I remember one, I've raised it before in a different talk somewhere, but that mentality of always say yes, typically usually gets you the good, the karma comes around, right? And there was this one time I was at Bry's, and this was when the floods were going on, and the boss came in and said, we need somebody for the weekend. And it was going to go to a guy that had kids and he had plans with his kids. So I was like, I'll do it. Had no idea what the task was. And thinking it would be some form of rewarding task, and it was actually filling sandbags for 3 days straight. It was the worst. It was the worst time of my
In the
life.
floods as well.
I was just I don't even know if our sandbags got used. We were just filling sandbags for 8 hours, 10 hours a day, or whatever it was. Service stations, terrible. Anyway, the context of what it gave me is it gave me an insight into the ability to identify who I am as a character,
Yeah.
initiative, discipline, courage. Stressful situations were day to day, which means that as a muscle, it really is being able to train how you handle those situations. And where that really played benefit is coming into, and I used to see it with my friends. None of my friends are in the military, and I used to see the difference in I don't know, you're in an airport. Airports are a great uh, psychology test. How do people
Airport dad
handle
mode.
airports? Yeah, exactly. And I had it recently, actually. I was flying out to Greece to go and look at something, and my connecting flight was delayed and then cancelled. And then I had to be in this, I had to be in Greece by 9 a.m. the next day. And all of a sudden, I'm now stuck in London at 9 p.m. Am I going to get there? What am I going to do? How am I going to react? And what you'll see the difference between, and it's unfair, I'm not putting all civilians in the same bucket, but what you'll typically see is people that have been in the military will handle situations much more differently because they're used to those kind of stressful things. And I remember everyone used to say that they can tell when I was in corporate consulting, they would ask, they would say, "Are you ex-military?" Just because of the way that you walk into a room, maybe the way that you shake someone's hand, because there's just a level of confidence behind you in things that you're doing. Because typically, actually, when you're dealing with a conference room of execs, it's much, 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 much less stressful than dealing with a conference room of military officers that have got an objective for a mission that might be going on in Libya.
Yeah.
So the host of soft skills that it breeds in the individuals that you don't even realize that you've got in comparison to others is one of the reasons why I was so set on hiring ex-military immediately, because loyalty, discipline, all of these things are just like innate within most military people.
Yeah. Is there like something people get wrong about military leadership or like just attributes you gain from the military? Because, like you said, coming out, you expect like strength, courage, probably a sense of calm in those stressful situations.
Outside of the military, in civilian street, leadership is unknown. There are very few organizations, other than the big ones, that put any form of funding and or training budget into teaching people what leadership is, because leadership is emotional intelligence, emotional awareness, it's empowerment, it's being able to handle difficult situations, stress under conflict, and all these kinds of things is what leadership really is. It's guidance and support, and the difference between leadership and management is very, very clear. And a lot of businesses in civilian street focus on management, and they'll promote unfairly or fairly. I'm going to be controversial in it, but typically you'll find that people that aren't good at their day-to-day role, and I don't mean I'm going to very controversial in what I'm saying here, but it's easier to promote somebody that isn't super, super effective. So if you've got a developer that is a phenomenal developer, the chances of them going towards management is much less than maybe a developer that's okay at development, but has got loads of people skills, so they'll go towards management instead. And you'll find that business will try and keep the good people there and then move up people that maybe aren't built that way and do something different with them. Whereas the military, to get leadership, you have to go through courses. To be promoted, you've got to go through courses. You've got to go and do specific leadership courses before you can take on the next role up. I would say, to second part answer your question, military leaders or people aiming for leadership from the military, you would usually find that they all come with the same qualities because they've been through the same process. It's exactly the same for every single person in the military. They have to do the same thing, and they have to get the same standard, and they have to pass the same tests. And that's deliberate. If you think about war,
Yeah.
they need to be able to follow the same commands at a
Cut and
moment's
paste.
notice in the same way. That's the whole point and why it's so succinct. And it's why we've got such a good military. We are, whilst we're only small, we are absolutely respected around the world. So I don't think so. There are obviously bad leaders, and the military is not what I just explained about promoting in civilian street the ones that maybe aren't the best at their day-to-day role, so giving them a different duty, which is management. That does still happen in the military. And there are definitely people in the military, again, controversially, that have maybe been there a little bit too long, and to be signed on, they need to be promoted, so they end up getting promoted. There are obviously, you're going to get bad apples everywhere. But I would actually say that typically, if I was speaking to a kind of leader and or military person from that background, you're going to get the same, hopefully, well, maybe you did or didn't, but even in that room when we did the event recently with Microsoft, all the same approaches, different levels of confidence,
Yeah.
but all the same approaches to every situation.
I think what I got from that as well, I don't know whether you realize you said this, but whenever you speak about civilian street, as you call it, you speak about managers and managing people, and in the military, it's leader. And I feel like the term leader or leadership comes as more of a team. You're leading a team, whereas,
No, if I can ask you a question back,
of course,
because you born and bred civilian street and industry,
oh,
would you say that, from previous roles that you've had, leadership is not what's known? Is it typically more management?
yeah, 100%. You're managed in a job, usually. You don't, I think leadership is more of a togetherness, and you're leading, you're helping, you're there to help, not manage. Management feels like a box. you're getting told what to
You've
do.
seen the difference in this 6-5, yeah?
I definitely have. I think
Interesting.
leadership is about advancing you and leading you to better, maybe to become like you, more of a mentorship. Managing feels like you're being managed in a bot. I think that's probably, I don't know whether you realize you say it that way, but with the army, you are a big team and that's it. Whereas in corporate, when you go into a big corporate, for example, once again, controversial in it is it's the majority, but there's probably a few that isn't like this. But you are a cog in, and people might not really care about your name or how your day was. They care about the work you're doing and are you doing enough to earn them money. Whereas obviously in the military, it's more you all have the same goal. And
Suppose in theory, managing people over the hill to run at gunfire is probably not going to work. Hence the need
you have to be the
to lead
first
them
one.
to their demise. Yeah.
And I think that's the difference as well, is that a leader to me is someone who would lead them. You're the first over that hill to gunfire. Managing is telling them to run over the hill, but you stay back. It's the hands off, isn't it? Approach.
Yeah, different approach. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's definitely, I think from hiring, having that bigger ex-military presence in our company, definitely I've felt more of a team focus than a hierarchical, I'm going to manage you and tell you what to do focus.
It's an interesting point, really, because you may or may not know this, but the people that I stole, I'm going to say stole, convinced, maybe convinced is a better word, to
Yeah,
come
let's
and
go
join
with
the mission.
convince.
And we'll go with convinced to come and join the mission, which is a fair way to say it. To be fair, if I'm going to keep it in military speak in some sense, the mission
Yeah.
was Power
Fine.
365 and it was success and it was to grow them from whatever they'd been doing previously into what they are now. And the ones that got on board were obviously the best of the best. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
why I stole them.
we wanted them.
But
Nope,
actually
you didn't steal them.
convinced them. A lot of them were maybe unfairly had not that I hadn't pinched convinced anyone that was like deep into a promoted journey.
Right.
We didn't go after sergeants and
You're not blowing
officers.
someone's career up.
Yeah, but what I suppose what I mean by that is that we'd got them early on as well. So for you to say that you can see the difference in the approach from the gents that we've got in the business, excuse me, the reality is a lot of those gents that we've got that are ex-military hadn't been through leadership training, extended leadership training. It's only really me that had gone in towards and done an 18-monther at Cosford and then some time at Cranwell. And the other boys had a couple of them had been promoted to corporal, but they were really early on in their careers, which means, if you have felt that and you have felt the difference at Power 365, it also shows that the innate skills within them were the driving factor as to why you feel
Mm.
it rather than what they'd been taught, which is an interesting point because it just meant, I suppose, in my eyes, what I would see from that is that if they'd stayed in, that's why I convinced them out, they would have been wasted there because they're evidently, they've been able to come into Civilian Street and absolutely smash it. So it's an interesting point that you raise that you've been able to feel it too, because
Mm.
it makes it sound like they'd all been through Cranwell, which is where you do your officer training, and the reality is they hadn't. So it's largely actually solely focused on those soft skills that it's given them, which is interesting.
And maybe it's the nature of people who want to go in the army as well, have that drive too.
I 50p fine you for every time you say army.
Sorry, RAF. Military. No, we'll do military because everyone was RAF.
Let's just go RAF. I don't know whether it's more offensive to the army or the RAF. I don't know which one. I don't know who'd be more offended.
Well,
I'm
from
going to
your
say
reaction,
the
I'm
RAF.
going to say the RAF.
Yeah, me personally.
So moving on, was there like a moment where you knew you were leaving, or was it like a gradual, oh, I could do this?
Do you want my honest answer or do you want my
Apart from the big
corporate
bucks
answer?
answer.
Apart from the big bucks answer, that was my honest answer.
Yeah, I thought it would be. No, go honest.
No, that's my honest
That is
answer. It
just
was because
outright full stop
I
big
wanted to earn
bucks.
loads more money. Yeah, 100%. That was my answer. I was driven by. I've always been. I came from nothing. I
Yeah.
came from a really really bad. I had nothing growing up really. I had lots of love. Don't get me. I didn't come from that kind of background, but the element of my upbringing didn't relate to a rich upbringing with super nice cars and houses
Materialism.
around me all the time. That wasn't the case. There was much bigger focuses throughout my childhood. And because of that, and my mum was always a magpie as well. She liked nice things and she tried her best to give those nice things and share those nice memories. But that magpie was set into me from a very young age. So my honest answer is I was absolutely driven by the bright lights of London. But if I give my kind of wider reasoning when I approached
Yeah.
my family to say I'm leaving the military, the reality is my learning journey was kind of coming to an end. And what my undiagnosed ADD might tell me is that I kind of need to be challenged continuously. Otherwise, I get bored. And there was only so many challenges left in the military for me. Whilst I'm happy to admit that I went into term 2 of my officer training and handed my notice in on week 1, I'd been given president of the mess committee. I had a double bed en suite, a room in the officers' mess. Like there was no better. I was selected 1 out of 120 to be the PMC, which is the president of the mess committee. So I was evidently doing well within officer training. And I was one of the youngest on the flight again. That's maybe a bit of a drag because we had a few pilots on that were straight from uni. But was I doing badly? No, but I found it just wasn't challenging me anymore. I didn't like what it was pulling me towards, and the bright lights of London were and corporate speak was risky and it's scary. And
Risk is
what I've
fun.
learned about my personality is that I need to feel. My therapist would tell me that I need to live in a high cortisol environment, and so I binned myself out.
Was there anything like that you found really like tricky coming out, or was it like
Uh,
smooth sailing, big bucks straight away?
I had a terrible time during my transition out of the military because I was going through officer training and I'd been given my promotion whilst I was going through training, which meant I didn't take my promotion because I was going for my commission. But so they
Yeah.
let me have my promotion and they put me back in whilst they transitioned me out because you don't just get to leave straight away. You
Right.
have to see out like a length of service. There's like a 6 month window if potentially as a minimum. Some people get 12 months, some people will be even given 18 months depending on the gaps. So that transition for me was really tough, and I was driving from Basingstoke into London every day and back. This is about an hour and 45 minutes each way, just killing me off. So my transition out was actually really, really not nice. I was in probably the darkest place I'd been in my entire life. But when I then hit Civvy Street, my first role, I was really lucky. I managed to get into like a really easy, I had a really soft landing in my first role, allowed me to kind of gain the relevant skills I needed. I felt stretched immediately because I didn't know how to speak their speak. And I was in an office with a lot of older people in my very, very first role, which meant I was kind of looked after and guided. It was like a very family orientated business. And then my second role was corporate consultancy for Pythagoras, now EY, Pythag. And I was really fortunate that my first line manager there, Steve and Dan were phenomenal. So they guided me through that transition. And then by the time I'd come from that, I was confident. I'd made all the mistakes that I needed to make. I learned what I can and cannot say around a table in a lunchroom. I'd learned who I can and cannot maybe stand up to and not stand up to. I'd learned the hierarchy. I'd taken all the lessons I needed, and my next role from there kind of was my career growth. Just so happened, unfortunately, that as with the military, my ceiling was short in a big corporate consultancy. As you said, you're just a number, you're just a cog. So that then gave me the ability to kind of think bigger. The business was a great idea, and what better option than you know when we started it was let's combine everything that we loved about corporate and loved about the military, lose all the rubbish around it, and create this golden gem, which would be a business full of everyone that gets on in the same way and has the same mindset. So transition out was good but soft. Then insert loads of risk and loads of fun and loads of long nights and late nights and long weeks, and managed to put a business together that contained in reality all of our mates and has grown then to be a very much sports team mentality of some fantastic individuals that are all now running towards the same goal, which is great.
Is there anything you had to like really unlearn and tell yourself to unlearn?
Yeah, structure in some sense. Whilst corporate might think they're structured, they're not structured in comparison to the military.
You missed
Um,
that.
do I miss the structure? 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll always miss that. And I also had to unlearn like a level of initiative in some sense.
Yeah.
You're almost rewarded in the military for doing more and pushing yourself more and, getting involved in and kind of solving things. And in corporate, it's very much the opposite. Somebody else will solve that. So I had to unlearn those things, almost had to undo my leadership pieces. And I was joining the bottom of the rung again, right? So hence starting the business allowed us to inject the inject an environment that everybody around us could grow, which then meant all of those things could be brought back. And
I was going to say,
um,
it's really interesting. You say stuff like in the military, you get rewarded for solving things. Corporate world from previous roles, there's no point in you solving those things because someone else will do it for you. And if you do it, you're not paid anymore. You're not given anything. It's just that. Whereas here, using your initiative and solving things actually gets you further. Here, you get rewarded for using your initiative. And that is something that is completely different working here in comparison to the big corporates is if you do it yourself, then you're going to get further here rather than relying
yeah,
on, and maybe that's me saying that because I'm myself in the marketing team. So I have to solve it myself. But there are things um, that maybe I don't need to do. That maybe, I'll be honest, in previous roles, I probably wouldn't have done go above and beyond because I know you're not getting the recognition for it. People will probably ignore it. Whereas here, you get the recognition and probably a bit of an ego boost, which you wouldn't get anywhere else.
yeah. And do you know what, Tess? It's really nice to hear that, and thank you for saying it. But I would absolutely attribute that to ethos and mindset, and that mindset is exactly from the military in the sense that shout about these things. This is exactly what the military was good at. Is kind of corralling because the reality of the military is, frankly, day to day is pretty shit, and the only way you get through it is by corralling each other. So 100% is what you're feeling there. Absolutely is the mindset of the leadership team being ex-military in the sense that everything should be celebrated. That's what we're here for. We're not here on this earth for very long, and we spend a lot of time working. So let's make it a nicer place to work, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, kind of closing up, we'll do some fast fire questions. So, you don't know these. So, on the spot,
It
I'm
just yeah,
giving you
quickly
like
disclaimer that these I've got no idea what's coming.
no clue what's coming. And I'm going to give you 5 seconds to think. You said you
Oh,
like working in high cortisol environments, high pressure.
yeah, fine.
Okay,
Let's
right.
do it.
None of them, no, I don't think any can lead
Unless
to
you're going to ask me to
controversy.
quote pi or something. I'm not very good at maths.
Right. One piece of advice to service leavers.
Trust in yourselves, believe in yourself. It's something I'm passionate about. Actually, I mentioned it at the military event. The reality of a service leaver is that we're told in the military, it's going to be a long answer, but I'm going to go with it. We're told in the military the grass is not greener. I can absolutely assure you that it is. And if you're considering transitioning out, but you don't know where to fall, the only thing you need to do is learn how to translate what you currently do in the military into civilian speak. And as an open offer there for anyone that's thinking about it, give me a message. But I used the other day as well the example of military people that are going in and briefing a room of officers on a mission update or a status update. That in itself directly translates to what management consultants do. Management consultants will go and take a load of information, draw a pack up, and brief out to a load of execs to guide them on what their journey should be. And they're just relating their experience and loads of data and giving people that information in a way that is understandable. And the military do one thing well, and that is taking data and knowledge and intelligence and briefing it. And that goes across any role. So whilst that's just one example, my biggest piece of advice is believe in yourself. Learn how to translate what you've done into some form of civilian speak and enjoy the daffodils
Show me the money.
and the money.
Okay, one mistake you'd avoid if starting again.
Starting what again? The business.
Let's go with one mistake you'd avoid leaving again, and then one mistake you'd avoid starting a business.
One mistake I would avoid leaving.
Transitioning out.
One mistake I would have avoided transitioning honestly and vulnerably. I probably would have I probably would have finished Cranwell. I was quick to jump, and
Right.
once I've got it in my mind that I'm doing something, I do it. And that my therapist taught me that, and that's the same even when I want to cope. and I'm going to go buy a coat. I don't need the coat because it's summer. My therapist told me I should wait 7 days and then reassess the situation. Usually I don't want it again after 7 days. So if the mistake that I made leaving is that I should have not wasted my 18-month engineering management degree and my time at Cranwell for the sake of an extra 6 months, I could have finished, got my commission, taken more from Cranwell from a leadership perspective, and potentially then even being a better version of myself in Civvy Street. That will not haunt me, but that is definitely a regret of mine that I didn't go out and actually finish my commission because I could have. I was in perfect place to do so. I just decided randomly on my drive back from Basingstoke to Lincolnshire that I was done, and that's it. See you later. Don't speak to me. That's my decision. You're not going to change my mind, despite everyone trying to change my mind. One mistake around starting the business I've got there's a list. Can I get the whole list out? I've got to pick one from this list.
Pick one. You got 5 seconds.
It's gonna sound I don't know which. There's one that's like really vulnerable, and then there's one that's the vulnerable mistake that I made. Can I give you one that isn't related to starting the business, but is actually related to owning business? The one mistake that I wish I could do differently is, and I don't know whether it is actually from the military, because you're taught what's known as a shit sandwich in the military. They don't like to admit it, but you are taught a shit sandwich, which is deliver good news, then bad news, then cover it with good news. So it's essentially a shit sandwich. And the bathtub effect is its actual name. And one thing that I had a terrible habit with, I mean, even now as I'm waffling, early on in my CEO/owning days, business owner days, is that when there was bad news, I would maybe beat around the bush to get. So if I had to tell somebody something, I would maybe try and protect them slightly emotionally from that bad news rather than just delivering the bad news. And if there's one thing that I wish that I could do differently, and I would implore anybody to take on board, is that you can control what I can control my actions, but the other person's reaction is out of my control. So all I can really do inside that is ensure that I'm clear and concise. And I wish I'd done that more often. Yes. Metaphorical band-aid. I don't know if that really relates to the military or not, but I'm going to go with that.
Okay. Oh, RAF in one word.
RAF and Paragua ad Astra.
I have no clue what that means.
If anyone from the RAF watches that clip, I am going to get a lot of grief from it. So maybe edit that out because that is
no, that's staying in because I have no clue what that means.
Put that on a reel that nobody ever sees because I'll just be given so much grief for saying that. That, by the way, is their Latin crest, Paragua ad Astra, through diversity to the stars, or through adversity to the stars. The military would call me a throbber for that. Anyway, one word is what's the word I'm looking for? It's not family.
Camaraderie. Microsoft in one word. That's
amazing.
We love Microsoft.
Microsoft in one word.
That's a tough one.
Microsoft in one word. Endless. Oh, no, that's 2 words.
No, you can have 2.
Unlimited possibilities.
I was going to go with the future.
Oh, that's good.
That's good, isn't it?
Your trusted partner, full stop.
What drives you now?
It's a very well-timed question to what drives me now. There's definitely still an element in me that's driven by my own ceiling, but the actual thing that I think drives is a very different answer to when I started the business at 26 or whatever it was, 27. Back then, I was selfishly looking for my own success. And what drives me now is other people's success. That's what drives me now. I'm still driven by, earning buckets, and I want
Yeah,
Aston
you've got to be
Martin.
selfish
At some
in
point,
some
I absolutely
ways.
will buy a boat. But yeah, other than that, other people's success.
Nice. That's everything then. Is there anything else you want to add?
When I get to ask you questions, and I get to ask like, what drives you? Is this just a one way?
No, because I wasn't in. This is a one-way street.
That's question 1. Why did you not join the military?
I can't do a press up. There you go.
Yeah, fair.
I have always wanted to go on, SAS Who Dares Wins.
Oh yeah, okay.
Really want to go on that, and I think it's probably my delusion talking, but I think I could do well on it.
Why? I reckon that you're perfect candidate for it, really.
No, I have looked at it, but
there's looking and there's doing. There's 2 different.
Yeah, I know. There's 2 different things.
We all look at things.
Genuine concern about press up, my arm strength, my upper body strength.
It's easily trained.
There you go. Either that or Love Island.
Cool.
No, that's
Great.
everything. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, well,
Nice